Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the Kevin Michael Grace Show. I have some shocking news for you. Bari Weiss has resigned. To repeat, Bari Weiss has resigned. I know this is shocking and appalling, but I ask you all to keep calm and to draw whatever strength you can in these dark days to deal with this news. Who's Bari Weiss, you ask? Okay. Bari Weiss, born 1984, was until today, a staff editor at the opinion section of the New York Times and a stalwart of the intellectual dark web. Now she's gone. An era has ended. Let's see. Let's catch up on this woman. I'm reading from Wikipedia here. She's a 2007 graduate of Columbia University. She was a Wall Street Journal Bartley Fellow in 2004 and a Dorrit Fellow in 2007 and 2008 in Jerusalem. She was a co-founder of Columbians for Academic Freedom. The group said that professors were intimidating students who expressed pro-Israel sentiments that the professors disagreed with in classroom discussions. Weiss said that she felt intimidated by Joseph Massad in a class. And again, I don't know, this is very few examples of students ever being intimidated by their professors. It's a sad state of affairs. A committee at Columbia charged with investigating these claims found no evidence of any statements made by the faculty that could reasonably be construed as anti-Semitic. The New York Civil Liberties Union said it was actually Weiss's group, the Columbians for Academic Freedom, who threatened academic freedom at the university by leveling baseless accusations against Muslim professors and pushing the university to fire critics of Israel. In her 2019 book, How to Fight Anti-Semitism, Weiss cites the incident with Mossad when talking about how she had a front row seat to leftist anti-Semitism at Columbia. She then worked for Haaretz and The Forward after graduation. She was an editor at The Tablet from 2011 to 2013, and then associate book review editor at The Wall Street Journal from 2013 until 2017, when she moved to the New York Times. Let's see, Weiss has expressed support for Israel and Zionism in her columns. When writer Andrew Sullivan described her as an unhinged Zionist, she responded saying she happily pleads guilty as charged. In 2018, she said she believed the sexual assault allegations against Supreme Court Justice nominee Brett Kavanaugh, but they should not disqualify him from serving on the Supreme Court because he was 17 when he allegedly committed the assault against Christine Blasey Ford. She is a lesbian, and we see the intersectionality wars going on here. She is a lesbian Jew, but apparently that is not intersectional enough. While attending Columbia University, she dated future Saturday Night Live star Kate McKinnon. What a gruesome twosome they must have been. And now she is with some other journalist, according to Medium.com's The Daily Queer. I don't know why it's, let's see, dating fellow New York Times writer Nellie Bowles, who I believe may have moved on to something else. Why the sexual peregrinations of journalists are now our business is an interesting question, but the personal is the political, as we know. And now it is the sociological as well. So the intellectual dark web. I guess these are liberals, actually, pretty much old-fashioned liberals. The phrase was coined by Eric Weinstein, This was after his brother, Brett Weinstein, was forced to resign at Evergreen State College when that college went nuts. Bari Weiss plugged this group in a column in the Times called Meet the Renegades of the Intellectual Dark Web. I don't really understand how they are supposed to be renegades, actually, except for the fact now that I suppose that it's become obvious that liberalism is dead. Some of the names associated with this group are Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Jonathan Haidt, Sam Harris, Claire Lehman, Douglas Murray, Jordan Peterson, Steven Pinker, Joe Rogan, the noted thinker, Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, Lindsay Shepard, Michael Shermer, Christina Hoff Sommers, the Weinstein brothers, and Deborah So, the Dr. Sex Pants. Yes, a very, very daring group. Although I must say, in all honesty, that some of these people have produced stuff that I have enjoyed. Lindsay Shepard certainly is a brave young woman. Douglas Murray has written some useful books, as has Jonathan Haidt. Claire Lehman, I don't know, what can I say? She's a good-looking woman and seems a reasonable person. But let's get to Bari Weiss's cri de coeur, as it were, her missive this bow of the good great lady, if I may be excused for mixing metaphors. This letter is to AG. I assume that's AG Sulzberger. It is with sadness that I write to tell you that I'm resigning from the New York Times. I joined the paper with gratitude and optimism 3 years ago. I was hired with the goal of bringing in voices that would not otherwise appear in your pages. First-time writers, centrists, conservatives, ho-ho, and others who would not naturally think of the Times as their home. The reason for this effort was clear. The paper's failure to anticipate the outcome of the 2016 election meant that it didn't have a firm grasp of the country it covers. Dean Baquet and others have admitted as much on various occasions. The priority was to help redress that critical shortcoming. Among those, I helped bring to the pages Venezuelan dissident, Iranian chess champion, Hong Kong Christian Democrat, also the aforementioned Ali, a bunch of other Arabic names, Rachel Denhollander, Nick Gillespie, Monica Lewinsky, yes. I suspect that Monica Lewinsky was probably carrying on about Bill Clinton and address and the shame and how she was badly treated. Thomas Chatterton Williams, Wesley Yang, and many others. Now, interestingly enough, a couple of days before Bari Weiss's bombshell resignation from the Times, Thomas Chatterton Williams, who is a half-black writer, he announced that someone was staying at his pied-à-terre in France, and that person had to be told to leave because of a rant against Bari Weiss. I looked up Thomas Chatterton Williams' wife, and my word, what a gorgeous woman. What a lucky man he must be. But back to Bari Weiss. The lessons that ought to have followed the election, lessons about the importance of understanding other Americans, the necessity of resisting tribalism. Oh, please. The necessity of resisting tribalism, writes Bari Weiss. And the centrality of the free exchange of ideas to a democratic society have not been learned. Instead, a new consensus has emerged in the press, but perhaps especially at this paper, that truth isn't a process of a collective discovery, but an orthodoxy already known to an enlightened few whose job it is to inform everyone else. And what, the New York Times became that a month ago, 6 months ago, yesterday? Well, the New York Times has been like that for many, many years. I don't know, going back to its coverage of the Soviet Union when its reporter there won a Pulitzer Prize for lying about the murder of millions of people. Twitter is not on the masthead of the New York Times, but Twitter has become its ultimate editor. As the ethics and mores of that platform have become those of the paper itself has become increasingly a kind of performance space. Stories are chosen and told in a way to satisfy the narrowest of audiences, rather than to allow a curious public to read about the world and then draw their own conclusions. I was always taught that journalists were charged with writing the first rough draft of history. Now, history itself was one more ephemeral thing, molded to fit the needs of a predetermined narrative. My own forays into wrongthink have made me the subject of constant bullying by colleagues who disagree with my views. They have called me a Nazi and a racist. I've learned to brush off comments about how I'm writing about the Jews again. Several colleagues perceived to be friendly with me were badgered by co-workers. My work and my character are openly demeaned on company-wide Slack channels where masthead editors regularly weigh in. There, some co-workers insist I need to be rooted out if this company is to be truly inclusive, while others post axe emojis next to my name. Still, other New York Times employees publicly smear me as a liar and a bigot on Twitter, with no fear that harassing me will be met with appropriate action. They never are. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me that these Slack channels are a very serious problem for the New York Times. I don't know why they're allowed. For employees, with editors looking on, bash Bari Weiss in this way, suggest she must be rooted out, etc., axe emojis. This is what labor lawyers might call constructive dismissal. There are terms for all of this. She writes: unlawful discrimination, hostile work environment, and constructive discharge. I'm no legal expert, and I know that this is wrong. Part of me wishes I could say that my experience was unique, but the truth is that intellectual curiosity, let alone risk-taking, is now a liability at the Times. Why edit something challenging to our readers or write something bold only to go through the numbing process of making it ideologically kosher when we can assure ourselves of job security and clicks by publishing our 4,000th op-ed arguing that Donald Trump is a unique danger to the country and the world, and so self-censorship has become the norm. As I've mentioned previously, freelance writers, opinion mongers, do not like writing for the New York Times because their copy is buggered about endlessly. A traditional view in journalism is that, well, the news columns and the, let's say, the editorials from the editorial board are, rigorously attended to. Opinion pieces are what? They're read for libel. They're read for obvious factual errors. They are, I suppose, read for incitement, but people are allowed to have their own opinions, but not at the New York Times. She continues, it took the paper 2 days and 2 jobs to say that the Tom Cotton op-ed fell short of our standards. We attached an editor's note on a travel story about Jaffa shortly after it was published because it failed to touch on important aspects of Jaffa's makeup and its history. But there is still none appended to Cheryl Strade's fawning interview with the writer Alice Walker, a proud anti-Semite who believes in lizard Illuminati. The paper of record is more and more the record of those living in a distant galaxy, one whose concerns are profoundly removed from the lives of most people. This is a galaxy in which, to choose just a few recent examples, the Soviet space program is lauded for its diversity, the doxing of teenagers in the name of justice is condoned, and the worst caste systems in human history include the United States alongside Nazi Germany. Even now, I'm confident that most people at the Times do not hold these views, yet they are cowed by those who do. Why? Perhaps because they believe the ultimate goal is righteous. Or perhaps it is because they know that nowadays standing up for principle at the paper does not win plaudits. It puts a target on your back. Too wise to post on Slack, they write to me privately about the new McCarthyism that has taken root at the paper of record. All this bodes ill, especially for independent young writers and editors paying close attention to what they'll have to do to advance in their careers. Rule 1, speak your mind at your own peril. Rule 2, never risk commissioning a story that goes against the narrative. Rule 3, never believe an editor or publisher who urges you to go against the grain. Eventually, the publisher will cave to the mob, the editor will get fired or reassigned, and you'll be hung out to dry. I certainly hope that the New York Times replaces Bari Weiss with a proud and independent Black woman, because Black lives matter, you know. Let's see. None of this means that some of the most talented journalists in the world don't still labor for this newspaper. They do, which is what makes the illiberal environment especially heartbreaking. I will be, as ever, a dedicated reader of their work. I can't imagine why. I mean, I go to the New York Times for stories for this live stream, but basically for the same reason that I would go to stories, particularly opinion stories from The Guardian, that I can scarcely believe that such and such is considered a story. So how was Bari Weiss's resignation received elsewhere? Well, how about at the Washington Post? It's pretty much a recap of her own resignation letter. Oh, hours after the Times confirmed Weiss's departure, writer Andrew Sullivan announced he was leaving New York Magazine by the end of the week. He, like Weiss, has lamented that the current cultural and political climate stifles open debate. During her tenure at the Times, Weiss cast herself as a centrist liberal, concerned that far-left critiques stifled free speech. She wrote about anti-Semitism and the Women's March, praised cultural appropriation, and warned of the limits of Me Too in a widely discussed column about Aziz Ansari, which inspired a Saturday Night Live sketch. Aziz Ansari, huh? Weiss has long complained about cancel culture. She signed a controversial open letter published by Harper's this month on the subject. Her critics have accused her of hypocrisy, noting an episode when she lashed back at a lesser-known writer by flagging a vulgar word in a tweet to the attention of the woman's employers, and her own history as a campus activist who took aim at professors. Weiss's letter drew concern from many readers with her claim that some Times colleagues have openly demeaned her on the company's internal Slack messaging program. It's one thing that many of our readers and staff disagree with Bari Weiss's views. Fine, tweeted Times correspondent Ruchmini Kalamaki, but the fact that she's been openly bullied, not just on social media, but in internal Slack channels, is not okay. Let's see. Ted Cruz, a senator from Texas, called the resignation letter eloquent, profound, incisive, and true. Atlantic staff writer Caitlin Flanagan tweeted that the way that the Times treated Weiss is unconscionable. It's not civil, it's not in the reader's interest, and the well-documented culture of extreme harassment will, I hope, now come to light. This is the biggest media story in years. Well, the media, and I must plead guilty to this to a certain extent, they love stories about the media. But of course, the media has been writing about itself for years and years and years. Talk show host Bill Maher wrote, as a longtime reader who has in recent years read the paper with increasing dismay over just the reasons outlined here. I hope this letter finds receptive ears at the paper, but for the reasons outlined here, I doubt it. But she has her critics who chafe at her portrayal of herself as a victim, arguing that the mob outrage her work is inspired is essentially the kind of free speech she purports to champion. If your entire brand is that you're going to say the things you think people don't want said, that it's completely disingenuous to act surprised when there's blowback, treated journalist and web publisher Elizabeth Spears, or to suggest that it's somehow unfair, as if everyone owes you their silence. Well, there's a lot of truth in that, actually. The internal drama played out on social media, and many staffers took exception with Weiss's characterization of it as a civil war inside the New York Times between the mostly young wokes, the mostly 40-plus liberals. Max Strasser said, "I am in the same meeting that Bari appears to be live tweeting. This is inaccurate in both characterizations. It's not a civil war. It's an editorial conversation, and it's not breaking down along generational lines." Okay. Obviously, the New York Times is a private enterprise. The difficulty is that there are few private enterprises that are allowed to exist that publish things that are against the narrative. It's that simple. I mean, I don't give a toss about the New York Times. I mean, others do. Jim Kunstler has been lamenting its degradation for years now. But I think there is a certain amount of hypocrisy in Bari Weiss's resignation. If she could have taken legal action against the culture at the New York Times, or certainly told her bosses that this was unforgivable, which it absolutely is. There's no question about that. But I mentioned Andrew Sullivan. This will be my last week at New York Magazine, he tweeted. Andrew Sullivan, of course, I don't think he needs an introduction. He is much, much more famous than Bari Weiss. He continues, I'm sad because the editors I've worked with there are among the finest in the country, and I'm immensely grateful to them for vastly improving my work. I'm also proud of the essays and columns I wrote at NYM, some of which will be published in a collection of my writing scheduled for next year. I have no beef with my colleagues, many of whom I admire and are friends. The underlying reasons for the split are pretty self-evident, and I'll be discussing the broader questions involved in my last column this Friday. I've been preparing for this eventuality, and the column will continue elsewhere. See you on Friday when I'll detail some exciting news. Could that exciting news be a hookup with Bari Weiss? That would be an unstoppable conversation. Sullivan replied to someone who had written, I'm happy for Blocked and Reported, wish Bari Weiss and Andrew Sullivan, the original solo pioneer, indie success, but it's tougher for the rest of us without a following. Still, maybe that's the new message. Go indie is the go west. Sullivan responded, this is the real problem, the intimidation of younger, less recognized writers and thinkers who challenge leftism. It's deliberate, illiberal, and saturates mainstream media. I suppose it depends on what you want to do with your life. When I entered journalism in the 1980s, I thought it was still fun, actually. There's a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of things said, in newsrooms and the like that would, I don't know, maybe get people arrested today. But, journalism is often a very stressful business, and people resort to a gallows humor and the like. Eric Weinstein says, this is the paper in 2016 that couldn't be interested in the story that millions of Americans were likely lying to pollsters about Donald Trump. The paper refusing to ask the CIA, FBI if Epstein was intelligence related. The paper that can't report that it seeks race rioting. Ida Bay Wells, a very distressing looking woman whose name is actually Nicole Hannah Jones. The New York Post had done a piece called Call Them the 1619 Riots. And she said it would be an honor. Thank you. Of course, Nicole Hannah Jones is the motivating principle, or the primary motivating principle behind the New York Times' 1619 Project, which has been gutted by historians. Helen Andrews, who is a clever and wise woman, writes, my general rule is that public resignation letters should be avoided and are almost always bad when attempted, but this one is both well executed and under the circumstances warranted. Okay. All right. The New York Times has a story on Andrew Sullivan leaving. And does it mention Weiss? Rumblings of a possible team up between Sullivan and Weiss. I'd say Bari's future is a lot more promising than in the New York Times, wrote Sullivan prior to announcing his own resignation. In response, New York and HuffPost contributor Yashar Ali tweeted, over the past few weeks, I've repeatedly heard rumors from sources that Bari Weiss and Andrew Sullivan were going to work on a project together. I'm going to go to the chat in just a minute, but this is from Newsweek. I didn't see it when it came out a week ago. I could hardly believe it, but of course, in retrospect, it seems rather inevitable. Jodie Comer is facing intense backlash this morning as unsubstantiated rumors, there's words missing here, say she is dating a Trump supporter spread on Twitter. Oh dear. The Killing Eve star, 27, began trending as fans speculated about her love life, with details emerging about her apparent boyfriend that have angered fans, with many calling for her to be cancelled. The British actress has been vocal in her support of the Black Lives Matter movement, mostly on her Instagram stories. She also just participated in Pride Inside, an online festival set up by Amnesty International, UK Black Pride, Parapride, Gendered Intelligence, and Stonewall. And award-winning actress and LGBTI plus ally Jodie Comer reads the beautiful first letter from Vita Sackville West to Virginia Woolf. Many on social media are now accusing her of performative activism for dating someone whose political affiliations they deem would put him at odds with those beliefs. Newsweek has reached out to Comer's representatives for comment. Twitter users have claimed that Jodie Comer is reportedly in a relationship, again, there's a word missing here, with a Republican named James Burke. One angry tweet with more than 1,000 likes reads, Jodie Comer dating a Trump supporter while she's portraying an alphabet people character and reading poetry as an ally is not only wrong, but disgusting. Also, her posts about BLM now look like performative activism. I don't, this is from someone called Mon Mon. I don't know what that means, actually. Someone else responded, Jodie Comer actually scares me because she'll be the biggest advocate for gay, trans rights, anti-racism, and women's rights, but then date a man who believes in nothing of the sort. Is she okay? One thread claims to have receipts as proof of them dating. I remember when Newsweek was a highly respected magazine. Yeah, it was. I know it sounds crazy. Newsweek and Time were both highly respected magazines, and they were important in that, the stories in them were newsworthy, many of them, and their cultural criticism shifted a lot of units, as they say, but those days are long gone. Okay, let's go to the chat here. I saw her on Real Time defending Zionism. Yeah, of course, she's against tribalism, Jonathan Paul says, I got a PhD student to mentor today, a woman from India. Okay. It's not about right versus left. It's about my tribe versus the others, i.e. nationalism, writes Adam. Yes, I think this is essentially true. Chogokin 666 says, I personally enjoy paying for the city to paint BLM on the street. Well, there's always bereaved mothers who need to be comforted, and what a greater comfort could there be than the words Black Lives Matter on the street? Jules Roy says, Brett and Eric have been having a multi-year meltdown. One of them, I forget which, I get them confused, was saying something to the effect that he had some bombshell to drop now that Bari Weiss had resigned. Let's see. Bezos owns WAPO. Does he own part of the New York Times too? No, there's a Sulzberger family. And of course, they have that Mexican billionaire with the phone monopoly who took a major share. Pied a terre, KMG worth the hour. I like that phrase. Carlos Slim. Yes, that's his name. Carlos Slim, monopoly capitalist. If the enemies of our enemies are our friends, then all of our enemies are also our friends. I've never, sometimes the enemies of our enemies are our friends. Sometimes. It's not a general principle. Eternal Fisherman says McCarthy was actually 100% right on literally everything ever. He was mostly right, to be sure. I don't want to go into that in great detail, perhaps on a different show. William Buckley actually wrote a book with his brother-in-law, Brent Bozell, defending McCarthy. McCarthy was opposed by the establishment, and so he had to be destroyed. Even they called him Tail Gunner Joe, mocking his valiant service in the Second World War. Blinksy, good riddance to Sullivan. Sullivan was an infiltrator of conservatism and then turncoat when Obama left office. He was an Obama supporter, was he not? Look, a gay activist like Andrew Sullivan is never going to be a conservative. Gayness is a revolutionary movement. It cannot be conservative by definition. Coachilango says, neither Margaret or Andrew Sullivan great for journalism last 15 years. Well, when Andrew Sullivan was at the New Republic, when he was editor there, he published a large section of... We seem to have a domestic dispute going on nearby. I have to have the windows open because it is quite warm in this room. I apologize in advance. Jan Reich says, congrats on 100 episodes, KMG. Here's to 100 more. Well, why, thank you. Jonathan Pohl says, why are all these journalists homosexuals? Entryism, one might say. That's my suggestion. Entryism. Eternal Fisherman says, Chairman Arthur Oakes Sulzberger is only half Jewish and was raised Episcopalian, as was the editor-in-chief Greg Sulzberger. Oh, Chocokin 666 says, even the World Socialist website Tor 1619 a new whiz way. Okay. Let's see. What is your opinion on Owen Jones? I don't know. Is he in his 40s? And somehow he contrives to look as if he's 18 years old. He must be on the same diet as Bryan Singer or the same regime. Tom Anderson says Barry Weiss and her co-ethnics think Auschwitz is around every corner. Yes. Yeah. Jim Smith, KMG, do you mean that Dave Rubin is not a conservative? No. No, he's not. As I say, by definition. Ben Shapiro is essentially a fighter for his tribe, okay? That's what he does for the most part. You will recall that he bought the whole Bubba Watson story and attacked NASCAR. And he attacked the Covington Catholic kids. He's always looking for an opportunity to, let people know he's not one of those people, And Shapiro's carrying on about facts and logic is, Jay June. Let's see. In more cancel culture news, Blake Neff, writer for Tucker Carlson, resigns over post, CNN says. This is from heavy.com. CNN Business, and I'll get into that a little bit more shortly, reports Neff had been using a pseudonym to post racist, sexist, and offensive comments on online forums. CNN reported that some of the tirades went on for years, while others featured the N-word and slurs against other races. According to CNN, Neff had worked for the Daily Caller, which Carlson helped create, before joining Carlson's show, where he told Dartmouth Alumni magazine that he wrote the first draft of anything Carlson read from his teleprompter. Neff's LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social media pages have been disabled. He described himself as a Trump supporter with a quirky sense of humor. Let's see. His username on the forum, Charles XII, is a reference to Charles XII of Sweden, a king known for his military victories and who abstained from sex and alcohol. Neff has repeatedly disclosed that he rarely drinks, and the Post story said he rarely dates. A bit of a touch of the supreme gentleman there, I think. 2017, former Tucker Carlson head writer Blake Neff was featured in Date Lab in the Washington Post. Quote, he dates rarely, and is an old-fashioned soul, is appalled by many of the sport's modern conventions, such as dating apps. Is dating a sport now? Let's see. During his time at the Daily Caller, he wrote articles with the titles including German police blasted for using racial profiling to stop sexual assaults, Stanford blasted for not having sexual assault kangaroo court, and Drexel Prof wrote long paper praising white genocide. Now, one of the problems with these stories is that, what exactly did Blake Neff write that was so offensive? And there were several examples given, and we were told that these were just so absolutely shocking, and, apologies in advance for repeating these shocking things. Most of the things that he said, I don't know how they could be considered shocking. They're jokes. I'm going to read a couple. I don't think that they're really that outrageous. I don't think that YouTube would be, this is just in the name of reportage, quote, "Black dudes staying inside playing Call of Duty is probably one of the biggest factors keeping crime down," unquote. Quote, "Honestly, given how tired Black people always claim to be, maybe the real crisis is their lack of sleep," unquote. Yes, it's just shocking, that last one I wrote. Absolutely shocking. One poster, Oliver Darcy, surely not the fellow from CNN, said, "Charles needs to own this. He has nothing to lose and everything to gain at this point. His whole life story has been archived and is now fodder for the public. So it's not like there's any turning back. Charles, if you are reading this, do not think of this as a disaster, but an opportunity. Do some CNN interviews, go on 60 Minutes. You were chosen for this role. All the things that make you a good dude," misspelled in the same way as in the OP, "will come through." The same poster said Charles was just being humorous. In a different CNN thread, someone commented, "Whoever tipped off CNN is evil and sick." There's a pattern here. We see that city bureaucrat, his Twitter account, much amusing, is gone because he was about to be doxxed by some wignat. But the wignats hate Trump, and people who are seen as insufficiently anti-Trump are doxxed or threatened with doxing. Tucker Carlson attacks ghouls over fired Fox News writer Blake Neff's wrong racist online posts, announces vacation. Quote, "We should also point out to the ghouls that are beating their chest in triumph at the destruction of a young man that self-righteousness also has its costs," Tucker Carlson said. "We are all human. When we pretend we are holy, we are lying. When we pose as blameless in order to hurt other people, we are committing the gravest sin of all, and we will be punished for it, no question." First, what Neff wrote anonymously was wrong, Carlson told his viewers. "We don't endorse those words. They have no connection to the show. It is wrong to attack people for qualities they cannot control." Carlson went on to say in oddly awkward language, "In this country, we judge people for what they do, not for how they were born." That's not true. I suppose, this is a pro forma statement. The number of times that, one heard that George W. Bush, and not a fan, was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, or, a silver foot in his mouth, or whatever. People are judged routinely for how they were born. No question about it. Let's see. Blake fell short of that standard and has just paid a very heavy price for it. Deadline comments, "Really? Losing your job for being a racist, sexist, homophobe is a heavy price? Sounds more like the definition of a much greater and larger difficulty." This story was broken on CNN, that Neff anonymously went on to auto-admit to mock, denigrate, and attack basically anyone who wasn't an Ivy League white guy like himself. Really? Is that what it was? The implication of Neff's apparent bigotry, what do you mean apparent bigotry? Just call him a bigot. Took on even more grotesque connotations when placed aside the race baiting that Carlson has repeatedly engaged in since taking over Bill O'Reilly's slot in 2017. Okay. We want to make it abundantly clear that Fox News Media strongly condemns this horrific, racist, misogynist, and homophobic behavior. Neff's abhorrent conduct on this forum was never divulged to the show or the network until Friday, at which point we swiftly accepted his resignation. Make no mistake, actions such as his cannot and will not be tolerated at any time in any part of our workforce. It just, you'd think that he was calling for genocide or something like that. Oh, and Oliver Darcy. He seems to be the doxer-in-chief at CNN. Yes, at the beginning, editors note, this article quotes racist, homophobic, and sexist language, much of which has not been censored. Ooh, sounds pretty exciting. Yes, this is a very, very, very long story from the doxer-in-chief at CNN. Thousands of words, thousands and thousands of words. I was familiar somewhat with this Oliver Darcy fellow, and I found a piece from 2 years ago. What Happened to Oliver Darcy by Robert Stacey McCain. The purge of Alex Jones and his InfoWars site from social media is the work of one man, CNN's Oliver Darcy. And why would he be so keen on purging people? Well, I guess because he has a past to atone for. McCain writes, what I can't understand is why Oliver Darcy would volunteer for this destructive mission. You can't? I remember Darcy when he was at Campus Reform, the college beat site run by the Leadership Institute. From there, he went to Glenn Beck's site, The Blaze, becoming deputy managing editor. In mid-2016, however, Darcy left The Blaze, joining Business Insider as politics editor before signing on with CNN in 2017. So why did Oliver Darcy, who called himself a conservative-leaning libertarian, yeah, that's never a good sign. That's never a good sign. Become a Torquemada, leading an online inquisition against right-wingers. Well, I have no inside information to account for this transformation, and I'm not sure if Darcy has ever explained his anti-free speech crusade. My hunch is that his experience working at The Blaze for 3 years might have been pivotal. Glenn Beck's operation once generated $19 million a year in revenue, but since 2014, the company has become increasingly troubled. And when there were mass layoffs in 2017, the story included this. Meanwhile, as Beck himself has acknowledged, his staunch opposition to Donald Trump has cost him dearly in alienated former fans, and even his most reliable source of income, his daily premier radio network syndicated talk show, has not been immune from the consequences of his never-Trumpism. The rise of Trump was also the decline of Beck, and we imagine that there would be some bitterness in Darcy's heart about that. Here's a story also from 2 years ago. Actor James Woods blasted CNN writer Oliver Darcy, who defended CNN's decision to file a motion to dox jurors in the Paul Manafort tax fraud trial, calling the move intimidation bordering on jury tampering. Quote, CNN just petitioned the court to dox jurors in the midst of deliberations in a blatant attempt at intimidation. This is what's disgusting. Judge T.S. Ellis denied the motion, saying he's concerned for the jurors' safety in light of the death threats he himself has received. Woods was responding to a tweet Darcy had posted rebuking conservative analyst Nick Short, who sarcastically suggested that the public should dox CNN employees since they're so hell-bent on doxing jury members who are still deliberating on a verdict. When do the folks at CNN get doxed? What's good for the goose? Short quipped. It is rare to publish jurors' names before a verdict is rendered. Their identities are usually shielded until after a verdict to prevent jury tampering. Oh, and Oliver Darcy tweeted, verified conservative think tanker appearing to cheer on the doxing of CNN employees. Really disgusting. Short shot back to those at CNN like yourself believe that publishing the names and addresses of the jurors on Paul Manafort's trial isn't a threat to the jurors themselves? Or is this form of doxing just how CNN does journalism? Yeah. Oh, let's see. Oh, CNN. As BizPac Review previously reported, CNN was widely slammed in 2017 after it tried to dox and publicly shame a private citizen for creating a comical WWE-themed meme that showed President Trump body slamming a CNN logo. CNN's Andrew Kaczynski bragged that he had tracked down and bullied a Reddit user called Han Asshole Solo who created the meme. Kaczynski boasted that this fellow apologized for creating the meme and deleted his account, including all his posts that mocked the humorless cable news network. CNN then bragged about suppressing the Reddit user's constitutionally guaranteed free speech rights on the 4th of July by threatening to dox him to the world. And Tucker Carlson is to take a long-planned vacation after the writer's resignation. And I guess the New York Times is thrilled at the possibility that Tucker Carlson will not be coming back from his vacation. Of course, Tucker Carlson is the biggest star on Fox News Network, and a show of his a couple of weeks ago received the biggest rating in cable news history. Of course, the Murdochs control of Fox News, and I wouldn't put it past them to dump Tucker Carlson in an attempt to become more respectable. Let's see. On Monday, Carlson, this is from the New York Times, on Monday, Carlson did not appear fazed by the various controversies surrounding Tucker Carlson tonight. He began with a segment criticizing Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and then interviewed Mark McCloskey, the lawyer who, along with his wife, brandished a handgun and a semi-automatic rifle at peaceful black protesters in St. Louis last month. Well, that's an outright lie. An outright lie. When you smash down a gate and a howling mob ventures into private property that is by no means peaceful. The impact of the outside criticism seemed more pronounced during the commercial breaks. Many large sponsors have removed their ads from Carlson's program in recent weeks, and his most prolific advertiser on Monday was MyPillow, the pro-Trump betting company. At the end of the broadcast, Carlson told viewers that he planned to spend the next 4 days trout fishing. Well, I hope he enjoys his vacation. Okay. Now, this is some breaking news. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is hospitalized for treatment of possible infection. Ginsburg, 87, is resting comfortably at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. She was admitted Tuesday morning after complaining of fever and chills. She is expected to remain hospitalized on IV antibiotics for several days. One has to admire the woman's spirit. If nothing else, she seems to be rushed to the hospital about, every 2 months? She is 87 years old, but she is hanging in there. At the time of Black Lives Matters, was it? Yeah, that it sort of became a singularity with the Oscars so white and cultural appropriation. And what do they call it? Whitewashing? I suggested half jokingly that Hollywood should be all black all the time. All the movies, all the TV shows should be just black actors and actresses, written and directed by black people, with everyone behind the scenes being black. And this is the only way for Hollywood to pay reparations for its shameful treatment of black people over the decades. Well, apparently from my lips to God's ear. This is a story in the Daily Mail. As the Hollywood's identity crisis, actors, writers, and producers warn of reverse racism in the film industry, which has created a toxic climate for anyone who is a white middle-aged man. Well, it serves you right, doesn't it? As far as Oliver Darcy goes, I have seen this again and again and again, that the conservatives, or Conservatism Inc., oh, look, here's a person who's not white. Here's a person of color who is an actual conservative, or a conservative-leaning libertarian. How many times does that not end in disaster? They should just stop doing that, but they're too stupid to stop. This is a story by Carolyn Graham. As the wooden boards are taken down from shop fronts and studio lots grind slowly back to life, Hollywood is basking in an unseasonable heat wave. The famous boulevards shimmer in 40 degrees Celsius haze. Let's see, that's 360, that's 72, plus a 32. Wow, that's 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Shaken by Me Too, paralyzed by COVID-19, the $50 billion film industry is finally emerging from a 4-month lockdown, only to find a new and very different world where tension is rising as surely as the thermometer. For the very public Black Lives Matter protests of polarized America, the silent fallout has now reached Hollywood. A revolution is underway. White actors are being fired. Edicts from studio bosses make it clear that only minorities, racial and sexual, can be given jobs. Now, this raises a very interesting question, which is, who counts as white? Do Jews count as white? Now, Luke Ford used to read the statistics of something like 90% or more than 90% of American Jews believe themselves to be white. But I happen to know that one might call the leading edge of Jewish opinion does not consider itself to be white and is aghast at the suggestion that they could be considered white. So we'll see how this plays out. A new wave of what has been termed by some as anti-white prejudice is causing writers, directors, and producers to fear that they will never work again. One described the current atmosphere as more toxic than Chernobyl, with leading actors afraid to speak out amid concern they will be labeled racist. The first sign came with one of the most powerful Black directors in Hollywood, Oscar-winning Jordan Peele. The man behind box office hits such as Get Out and Us stated in public that he did not want to hire a leading man who was white. "I don't see myself casting a white dude as the lead in my movie," Peele said. "Not that I don't like white dudes, but I've seen that movie before." You see the projection there? You see that? White movies are about all sorts of things, all sorts of topics. Black movies tend to be about blackness. That's what they're about. They're about blackness, including deranged fantasies like Get Out. Now, Jordan Peele is half white. Is he not? Didn't he have a white mother? Yeah, I don't. This is now. Let's see how this plays out. What you see is half blacks or less than half blacks rising to the top in Black America. You see, and increasingly, people like Colin Kaepernick and that silly woman who's now an anchor for MSNBC, Joanne Reed. They're not descendants of slaves. They're from Africa. Directly. So how long before the black people point out that there didn't seem to be all that much love for them as opposed to the mulattoes? And Jordan Peele's wife is called Chelsea Peretti, and she is not a black. She is white. So Jordan Peele's children are going to be at best 1/4 white or 1/4 black. Do they count as black? Well, I mean, we all know that there's been, an effective one-drop rule in recent years, and it's the reverse of the old rule because it's, it's the strong horse versus the weak horse. Back to the Daily Mail story. As one studio executive responded privately, if a white director said that about hiring black actor, their career would be over in a heartbeat. And few doubt it. Peele is more vocal than most about his hiring policy, but his outlook is increasingly widespread. Dozens of producers, writers, and actors have spoken to the Mail on Sunday about the wave of reverse racism pulsing through the industry. Speaking on condition of anonymity, the executive confirmed that the climate is now toxic for any white middle-aged man in show business. Their careers are pretty much over. They continued, quote, "We're only hiring people of color, women, or alphabet. to write, star, produce, operate the cameras, work in craft services. If you are white, you can't speak out because you will be instantly branded racist or condemned for white privilege. The pendulum has swung so far, everyone is paralyzed with fear by the idea anything you say could be misinterpreted and your career ended instantly. There are a lot of hushed conversations going on, but publicly everyone is desperate to be seen to be promoting diversity and too terrified to speak out. It's imploding, a total meltdown. The failure to nominate actors of color for the Oscars has been seen as a stain on Hollywood in recent years, but there are fears that the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction and that the movie and TV industries are on the edge of a collective nervous breakdown. The latest buzzword in Tinseltown is BIPOC, an acronym for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, and MENEME, which means a white male enemy of the diversity movement. Everyone wants to be able to check all the boxes for each new hire, according to one Oscar-nominated insider. Directors normally have a say about who is in their project. Not anymore. It's all about BIPOC hiring. And it's coming directly from the heads of the studios who know their jobs are on the line. White middle-aged men are collateral damage. They are the enemy. What about the white middle-aged and old men, say, who run the studios? But again, the question is, if you're Jewish, are you considered white? And I bring this up because expect there to be a huge battle about this real soon now. An actor in his 50s who has worked on some of the biggest shows of the past 20 years described how during a recent audition, the casting director told him he was perfect for the part, but they had been instructed to hire a person of color for the role. I get it. I really do, the actor said. I understand Hollywood still has a long way to go before people of color are properly represented on screen, but how am I supposed to pay my mortgage, put food on the table? Everyone is terrified, and you can't say anything because then you set yourself up for public crucifixion. Dismissing such complaints, however quietly expressed, Selma director Ava DuVernay. Oh, she made a movie about civil rights in the 1960s. That's really relevant. She's now one of the most powerful women in Hollywood, wrote on Twitter, everyone has a right to their opinion, and we, Black producers with hiring power, have the right not to hire those who diminish us. So to the white men in this thread, if you don't get that job you were up for, kindly remember, bias can go both ways. This is 2020 speaking. Let's look up this Ava DuVernay, now one of the most powerful Black women in Hollywood. What exactly, where does she get her rep from? From Wikipedia, she won the directing award in the U.S. Dramatic Competition at 2012 Sundance for her second feature film, Middle of Nowhere. Which had a box office of $236,000. For her work on Selma in 2014, which had a box office of $66.8 million. It probably made about $10 million. She became the first Black woman to be nominated for a Golden Globe Award, and also the first Black female director to have her film nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture. Can we finish with this? The first X to do Y? I mean, because we pretty much run out of categories. This has to become increasingly intersectional. DuVernay's 2018 Disney children's fantasy film, A Wrinkle in Time, made her the first Black woman to direct a live-action film, earning $100 million at the U.S. box office. What are they leaving out here? Let's see. Budget, $100 to $130 million, and I don't know whether that includes promotion. Box office, $133.4 million. So we are looking at a stupendous loss there. Stupendous loss. At least $100 million. Now, A Wrinkle in Time is based on a beloved children's book. And Ava DuVernay thought that it would be a good idea to cast Oprah Winfrey in the lead. Also Mindy Kaling and Gugu Mbatha-Raw. And so what else has she done? When They See Us It's an American crime tragedy web television miniseries. It's based on the Central Park jogger case. So let's run through that lie, that enormous lie, one more time. So that's, I guess, all you have to do to become oh so powerful in Hollywood. I guess it helps to be a friend of Oprah. No question about it. The Mail story says it might seem an irony then that Hollywood has long been seen as the heart of liberal America. Leading figures from the industry have a reputation for lecturing the world on issues of human rights, diversity, and the environment, from George Clooney's campaign to end the genocide in Darfur. Have we heard anything about Darfur recently? It's funny how that dropped off the radar. To Leonardo DiCaprio's missives on global warming. And it mentions the Jodie Comer incident. And here's a picture of Ava DuVernay, who appears to have a small dead animal on top of her head. Oh, this is very interesting here. There was a movie starring Zero Mostel and Woody Allen, which was called The Front. And it's based on something that happened during the days of the blacklist, that there were certain people who couldn't work. They were mostly writers. They couldn't work in Hollywood, but they continued to write scripts, and someone else took credit for them. Such is the culture shift that one studio is now preparing to shoot a film with an all-black cast and crew, a project which would normally give cause for celebration. I wonder why. But when a white woman, a highly respected executive, was tasked to oversee the production on location, she was told she would receive no on-screen credit. I wonder what the various unions and professional associations have to say about that. A source from the studio behind the project said the kids are making the film are fresh, great new talent, but they are kids. None of them are over 25. Most of them have never been on a movie set, let alone a movie which cost $20 million. They don't know the basics about how union rules work, about taking regular breaks, or how long you can shoot in a day. Ooh, the lawsuits are going to be delicious. We need to protect our investment and make sure they get up on time and shoot what they need. Otherwise, we could have a multi-million-dollar train out of control. We're sending this woman who is brilliant to run things on the ground, but she won't get any title credit. People won't admit it. They can't admit it, but reverse racism is definitely going on. You could argue that it's a good thing, that this swinging of the pendulum so far the other way is only fair after years of white privilege, but at what cost? Surely it is best for everyone if people are hired on the basis of gender, talent, and ability. I can tell you we are hiring people based purely on their ethnicity, gender, and social media profiles. If you are brown and female and gay, then come on in. We're all getting diversity training. We're walking on eggshells during every Zoom meeting. It's got to the point where if there's a person of color in the meeting, we can't hang up before they do for fear of it being considered offensive. One film editor who did dare to speak out has seen his career all but destroyed. Nathan Lee Bush, who has shot commercials for corporations such as Budweiser and Nike, criticized a post on a private Facebook group which read, "I need an editor looking for black union editors." Bush, who is white, described the advert as anti-white racism and wrote, quote, "Look what we're asked to tolerate. The people openly and proudly practicing racism are the ones calling everyone racist to shut them down, and anyone who dares to speak up is canceled. Their livelihood and dreams stripped from them by a baying mob," unquote, which was a pretty good prediction. But voicing his concerns proved disastrous. One of Bush's main clients, the U.S. restaurant chain Panera Bread, vowed never to work with him again, and Bush has since been forced to apologize, which was stupid of him. To anyone I offended, I'm very sorry. Why? Everything you said is true. Now, look, it's really not necessary for any new television shows or movies to be made. I could spend the rest of my life catching up on great work that I haven't seen, and there is a lot of it. You know, I like to be kept au courant with the culture, but the stuff that we're getting is not going to represent the culture. It is going to represent BLM. I just imagine, what are we going to see? A 100-part series of the Black Civil Rights Movement, a 200-part series on the sainted Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a whole bunch of Oh, here are the civil rights heroes you've never heard of, and probably deservedly so. They'll all get series on them. And we will have dozens of movies about how horrific the Black experience is in America, probably worse now than it's ever been, because a Black person can't go on the street without being shot to death by a trigger-happy cop who'll go out of the way to do this. This is going to destroy Hollywood because, look, it's kind of an open secret in Hollywood that Blacks like to watch movies with Blacks in them. You know, and Tyler Perry has made himself a rich man with this sort of thing. Let's see, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, Bad Boys for Life or whatever. Apparently that is the #1 ranked film, box office-wise, of 2020. Of course, there's not a lot of competition, but who's going to see that movie? Black people overwhelmingly are going to see that movie. Look, the truth is, you know, for good or ill, that Black people in North America, and I say North America because Canada is included in the box office receipts, they have very little interest in Black lives. They just don't. They'll mouth all of the platitudes, and certain of them, you know, can be bullied into seeing movies like Selma. It's like, oh God, do we have to watch this again? Yeah, I know, segregation, Jim Crow, very, very bad, brave people fighting it, they win. Okay, I got it, you know, but it's just not going to stop. Now, you may think that the Daily Mail article is an exaggeration, but apparently it is not. Here is this is from the Warner Media page, and they're advertising for a job, senior editor, column race. It's a full position. This is a senior leader in charge of shaping CNN Digital's coverage of race in America. This role will report into the National Digital News Desk and partner closely with the beat leader key teams in digital and in news gathering. The senior editor will partner with our CNN beat leader on race to break news and cover the stories and conversations around race, the struggles, the progress, and the triumphs happening across the country. He will help us celebrate the voices of Black, Latino, Hispanic, Asian American, Native American, and all races. Blah, blah, blah. And Warner Media advertised 5 jobs for CNN Digital, and 4 of them have race after the comma. Yeah, how about that? How about that? I guess CNN is going to be black, black, blackity, black, black. And again, I want these companies to be destroyed. I want them to be destroyed. They can't help now but take children's classics and, you know, stick transsexuals in them, and lesbian teachers and gay dads and all the rest of it. They just can't. They delight in it. They want to humiliate us. And, you know, if there aren't going to be white people working in Hollywood, working and acting in Hollywood, very few people are going to want to consume their products. I mentioned The Guardian earlier, a typical piece from The Guardian from Fiona Beckett. It's time the wine industry stopped taking safe stances to keep its primarily white audience comfortable. The wine world needs to recognize the growing demand and desire for representation from Black consumers. And of course, it's an outrageous suggestion that Black people, they're not wine connoisseurs, because Fiona mentions the Black Cellar Club and SAPOC, the Hughes Society, Black Girls Wine, and Black Wine Professionals. There are still numerous cringe-making stories of customers summoning white colleagues in preference to a Black sommelier, and of the casual stereotyping of Black tastes in wine. As Tahira Habibi of Sipping Socialite and founder of Hue puts it, the fact that you as a white woman can enjoy a glass of Moscato without a thought versus me as a Black woman automatically being labeled ghetto for the same thing. We are constantly battling one another. I don't know how one can live with that level of self-consciousness without suffering a nervous collapse. I really don't. Let's go back to the chat, see what's going on there. Okay. The Help. Oh, that's where excrement is eaten by white people. Viola Davis is on the cover of Vanity Fair because what? She says The Help was created in a cesspool of systemic racism. I betrayed myself and my people. Okay, and this was reported by MCT. Philip Daniel says it's not reverse racism, I suppose. Peter, I'm sorry for probably mispronounced your name, Starzo Mitzik. How to categorize mixed race because they can just swing either way? Well, they're just swinging one way now. They're just swinging one way now. William Hicks says, 1/4, moving on up. That lighter skin, a tone ladder to the big time. To that deluxe apartment in the sky. Jonathan Pohl says there used to be mixed people that passed as white. Yes. There's a book by Philip Roth that was made into a movie starring Anthony Hopkins, which has perhaps the worst title that I've ever heard of any serious book, The Human Stain, which is about that. Not true. Pushkin was considered white and was 1/8 Ethiopian, and he certainly did like to harp on it, didn't he? Made him exotic. Eternal Fisherman says, YT, I don't know. I'm from Central Europe, and for us, French are French, English are English, Polish are Polish, Russian are Russian, Italians are Italians, not just some skin color. Yeah, I think that's one of the big problems with white nationalism. Well, no one knows what it is, and it's stupid. But it's a refusal to understand that white people in Europe are not a blob of whiteness that occupy the continent. They're quite different. They're quite different. 2020 is going to set this country back 60 years. On the other hand, it might deal with some problems. It might take out some problems. Oh, yes, Philip Daniel, Madeleine L'Engle was right-wing, but Brie Larson said, A Wrinkle in Time is not for white men. Yeah, why don't you just take out like 30 to 35% of the audience right there? Stay away. Stay away. It reminds me of that Libby Wolfson's musical comedy, dramatic musical comedy. I'm taking my own head and screwing it on right, and no guy's going to tell me that it ain't, which is a play that she and Sue Bopperstein Simpson made for women and a few men, but mostly for women. Brie Larson. What is that woman's problem? Is it being closeted that makes her so nasty? Because the woman wins an Oscar for acting, and then she is in the lead role in an action film which grosses over $1.1 billion. You think she'd have a smile on her face? Nope. But she always has this scowl. Always has this scowl. Visionary Companion says, Oprah said when asked if she had read the book, nah, it didn't come to my neighborhood. What, there was no library anywhere in the vicinity? No bookstores within a short bus ride? That's curious because, women like Oprah tend to carry on about the library. The library was their lifeline because life was so stultifying and oppressive. You could go to the library and you could read these books, which heartened you, which opened different worlds to you. Jonathan Pohl says Darfur ceased to be an issue once South Sudan got independence. Yes, but is all the unpleasantness ended there? That's why I brought that up, because that seems to be, these things just drop off. They just drop off the radar. Aslan said Sudan's name in Arabic is As Sudan, which means the blacks. Oprah's sarcasm about the book didn't stop her from glumping into the movie. She looks absolutely ridiculous in it. Philip Daniel, we're dimmies in the woke caliphate. Look, you know, I'm fond of quoting Herbert Stein in this regard. You know, things that can't continue don't. And we are almost at that point. Now, you're seriously going to give Hollywood over to people who have never worked on a movie, people who do not understand how to do their jobs, people who don't understand union rules? You're going to have the actual supervisors not being given screen credit? Yeah, this is going to end up well. Calix Rose says Tyler Perry makes horrible movies. I've never seen any of his movies. I've seen some of the trailers. He had a TV show which played on TBS, I think. And I would watch reruns of some shows that I liked on TBS, I suppose Seinfeld. And then I would go to sleep and I'd wake up. This was in the afternoon, and I'd wake up and Tyler Perry's show was on. And as far as I could, it was all fat black people yelling at each other. It just never stopped. Tyler Perry has no talent, and his movies are all of him dressing in drag, says Peter Starzomitz. I saw him in that movie Gone Girl playing a defense attorney. I thought he was pretty good in that. James Mitchell says Joe Rogan's mind is fried, yet he still pantsed Weiss on the show. I didn't. I heard that apparently she gave a bad account of herself. I didn't listen to the interview. Let's see. China money is about over, says Deborah S. Well, China is not interested in movies about black people. Movies by black people, for black people. They are not interested in that in the slightest. Affected Area said, I learned today that John Adams accused Thomas Jefferson of being hermaphrodite. I hadn't heard that one before, but it wouldn't surprise me given that Thomas Jefferson is the source of this scurrilous rumor that Alexander Hamilton was black. Aslan says, I've never watched Seinfeld. Well, I don't know. I think it's enormously funny. It's one of my very favorite shows. I reported a neighbor who had a BLM sign on her window. It's now gone, says Aslan. Okay, so what are we moving on to here? Oh, yeah. Black theology. Nick Cannon says white people are, and these are direct quotations, a little less, closer to animals, the true savages, acting out of a deficiency, so the only way they can act is evil. Adam Ford asks, when does he get canceled? He's the founder of the Babylon Bee. How about that? I quite like the Babylon Bee. Okay, so in Fast Company, Nick Cannon speaks out on his controversial interview. I want to be corrected. No, you can't speak English, pal. You want to correct what you said, perhaps? Nick Cannon drew sharp criticism over the weekend for a recently surfaced video that contains anti-Semitic theories and rhetoric. This is by K.C. Ifeanyi. Come on, you've all noticed this. We're getting all these African names in the media. And again, how does this deal with the question of, redressing past wrongs? How does it deal with reparations? Because these people are not the descendants of slaves. On an episode of his videotape podcast, Cannon's Class, Cannon was in discussion with former Public Enemy member Richard Professor Griffin, who was kicked out of the rap group in 1989 for making anti-Semitic comments. Was he kicked out of Public Enemy? He was quoted as saying that Jews were responsible, quote, for the majority of wickedness that goes on across the globe, unquote. This Black Lives Matter movement is bad news for American Jews. Very bad news. Because the BLM true believers, they cannot help themselves. I've seen them try, but they really, really hate Jews, and they just can't keep a lid on it. Although Griffin said that his viewpoints weren't rooted in hate. Okay, here we go. He asserts that the Semitic people and language have nothing to do with white people. Therefore, calling a black person anti-Semitic is a fallacy. Cannon called black people the true Hebrews, and he also praised Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan. Yes. Cannon claims that every time I've heard him speak, it's positive, it's powerful, it's uplifting, and yet Farrakhan has been demonized. Look, I understand that a lot of people, and not just black people, are impressed by Louis Farrakhan, but the fact is that Louis Farrakhan's theology, his worldview, is quite simply demented. Shortly after releasing his initial statement amid the backlash on Monday, Cannon spoke with Fast Company. There's no malice or negative intent, but in a time like 2020, we got to have these conversations. And if there's an assumption that is perceived as ignorant, let's debunk it right away. My podcast is specifically an academic podcast to have tough and difficult conversations based off of text. Did this guy get past grade 6? And if we read something and something's not accurate, let's do away with it. I can't wait to sit down with some people that can help educate me and help further this conversation. I want to be corrected. In reference to condemning hateful rhetoric but praising a figure such as Farrakhan, Cannon likens the dichotomy to his relationship with his televangelist father, who passed away in 2016. I just want to focus on the positive aspects, but I condemn any hate speech. I don't care who said it. I don't care if my dad said it. I don't care if Farrakhan said it. If anyone is saying something hateful or demonic, I don't support that at all. And he was also accused of issuing a non-apology apology. And he said to me, apologies are empty. Are you forcing me to say the words, I'm sorry? Okay. All right. So who is Nick Cannon? He was married to Mariah Carey for 8 years. They have 2 children. I don't know that I've ever seen him in anything. He has a very lengthy Wikipedia entry. Oh, he used to be in a rap group called the G4 Dope Bomb Squad, which is really try hard, even for the name of a rap group. He has been involved in dozens and dozens of things, and all I can think of is that cliche from Red Letter Media, endless trash. It's just this. Yeah, he created, produced, and hosted the MTV improv comedy series Wild and Out. He seems to have a significant role with Nickelodeon. I'm sure he could tell us a lot about all the abuse there. He also seems to have a long-standing relationship with R. Kelly. I'm waiting for all those people to be canceled. All of the boy molesters. Not that I'm implying anything about Nick Cannon. Lonnie was married to Mariah Carey. No flies on him, obviously. He's the chairman of Teen Nick for Nickelodeon and the development and creative consultant of the network since 2009. He has a podcast. He hosts Nick Cannon Mornings at Power 106 in Los Angeles. He got into a diss battle with M&M. Okay. All right. Apparently this went back and forth. Yeah, let's see. Cannon released The Invitation, an Eminem diss track on December 9, 2019 as a response to Eminem's feature on Fat Joe and Dre's Family Ties dissing Cannon. The track featured former record producer and convicted felon Suge Knight, as well as rappers Hitman Holla, Charlie Clips, and Prince Easy, whom Cannon referred to as the Black Squad. Regular Algonquin round table there. Let's talk about Professor Griff. Because, I know a lot of people a lot of hipsters. They like to talk about Public Enemy and how great Public Enemy were. And, as opposed to, like the garbage rap surround Public Enemy. Oh, well, I'm not disputing the fact they're enormously influential. Richard Griffin, born in 1960, a military veteran. He is best known for his S1W security team dressed in military uniforms who toured with Public Enemy, providing security and doing choreographed military step drills on stage. Today, he does lectures on politics, society, and the music industry, has an internet radio show on World Star Hit Radio, and teaches classes in the Kybalion. Yeah. It's a book claiming to be the essence of the teachings of Hermes, Trismegistus, Hermes, the thrice blessed. Woo! And the 7 hermetic principles for self-mastery. Witchcraft, in other words. So he said, if the Palestinians took up arms, went into Israel, and killed all the Jews, it would be all right. Then he said, Jews are responsible for the majority of the wickedness in the world. In a series of press conferences, Griffin was either fired, quit, or never left. It's my understanding, and I've spent some time looking into this, that he never left Public Enemy. Def Jam co-founder Rick Rubin, and of course it's kind of an open secret that rap music was invented by Rick Rubin, which I find very amusing. Rick Rubin is no question, and I'm saying this with great sincerity, he is an immensely talented man. Had already left the label by then. Taking his place along Russell Simmons was Liar Cohen, the son of Israeli immigrants who had run Rush Artist Management since 1985. Before the dust settled, Cohen claims to have arranged for a Holocaust museum to give the band a private tour. I bet they really enjoyed that. So in a 2009 book called Analytics, which is spelled XZ for some reason, he sort of makes an apology for what he'd said about Jews being responsible for the majority of wickedness around the world, because he would have to know about the majority of wickedness that went on around the globe, which is impossible. I'm not the best knower. God is. Now, in 2018, we get straight into the crazy again. In a YouTube interview on August the 2nd of that year, Professor Griff recalled one of his many long conversations with record executive Liar Cohen. He said he used to have respectful debates about history. I told him about the history of him and his people, the Ashkenazi, the Ashka Nazis. And when I laid it on him, he couldn't handle it. And I'm like, all right, which is common knowledge today. Everybody talking about it. You understand what I'm saying? People are making books about it. That's definitely the kind of guy you want to get involved with. If you're Nick Cannon. Is Nick Cannon going to survive this? Because if he does, I mean, come on, the veil has been dropped. That there are certain people can just say whatever they like. Whatever they like. Sue Bopper Simpson was the daughter of the Big Bopper. Yeah. No, that is just an outstanding. The musical itself is outstanding. And Joe Flaherty playing the bemused method actor Seth Dick III. Terrence Howard's teriology theory of math. I have heard the Black Hebrews, the Black Israelites. I've heard their shtick. It's kind of impressive because they can go for like 10 minutes without pauses, and it's very fluid. They got it all worked out. Again, it's all completely crazy. But if you look into the Nation of Islam and affiliate organizations or organizations that broke off from the Nation of Islam, they're all just bonkers. They're all just completely bonkers. Of course, the Nation of Islam was founded by a white man from New Zealand called Ward Ford, amusingly enough. Tom Anderson says Mariah Carey was sexy in her heyday. She was. I suppose now she's just known as being, again, crazy. Have you seen Africa Adio, says Quachulango? No, I don't know what that is. YT says a Muslim Uber driver who had a makeshift plastic separator between her and backseat reported me to Uber for not wearing a mask, though I asked her if she wanted to wear one if she's uncomfortable. British Israelism, yeah. Yeah, the British are the real Israelites. Some people believe that. It had a vogue in what, the 19th century, perhaps the earliest 20th century, and I suppose that strain of neo-Nazism which argues that Jews aren't the real Jews, that they're descended from, I don't know, that is actually a derivation of British Israelism as well. Okay, yeah, we're talking about different rules for different people. It's from the New York Post. Mayor Bill de Blasio has banned large gatherings in the city until the end of September, saying we just can't have that while we're focusing on health right now. But he's making one big exception: Black Lives Matter protests. This is a particular moment in American history where 400 years of oppression, 400 years of racism are being addressed in a very, very powerful way that can't compare to anything else, and people's voices need to be heard. Privileging some speech is bound to infuriate everyone who isn't allowed to gather when they think it is just as important. He's basically begging any group with any pride to also challenge the ban. And rightly so, because the mayor is engaging in blatant viewpoint discrimination, which is blatantly unconstitutional and guarantees the courts will support those who defy him. Heck, de Blasio, along with Governor Death and Attorney General Tish James, is already under a federal injunction not to ban large outdoor religious gatherings after 3 Orthodox Jews and 2 Catholic priests went to court because protests but not services were being allowed. The plaintiffs noted that de Blasio himself violated the ban on gatherings of more than 10 when he attended a protest at Cadman Plaza. His administration evicted Hasidic children from a park days later for breaking that same edict. He's a strange man. Sandinista, Stan. His name is Warren Wilhelm Jr. He changed his name to Bill de Blasio being his mother's maiden name. He married a black lesbian 7 years older than himself. Now that's unusual. So Jim Kunstler has been under fire because for not attacking Trump enough. He's made it clear right from the very beginning that he doesn't like Trump very much, certainly not personally, insulting him as the golden golem of greatness. But he's come to a position statement. He wrote yesterday, "Nothing moves and nothing wants to move or even think about moving under the punishing heat dome. For the moment, the sore, beset nation stews in a dreadful stillness. The mysterious consensus of the Black Lives Matter mob has hit the pause button on street tantrums, though plenty of damage has been done to businesses, personal lives, undefended monuments, and the public interest. Each day is another frightful step in the creep toward mass default, as rents, mortgages, car loans, insurance premiums, electric bills, business debts, and other common obligations go unpaid. It's like one of those eerie interludes on a battlefield when forces stop to gather their wounded and reassess their positions. Perhaps you, like me, are skeptical of the news reports about the surge in COVID-19 cases, or, more to the point, what it actually means. Cases may be surging, but deaths are way down. Media megaphones such as CNN and the New York Times eagerly retail maximum hysteria to provoke renewed business lockdowns, ensuring further destruction to the old service economy, and more importantly, to disparage Trump. I wonder if the virus is in fact close to burning itself out and the surge in cases signifies that we'll soon run out of new victims. How many asymptomatic carriers are out there? We just don't know, but by August we'll have an idea. It is certainly in the interest of the woke resistance and its inquisitors in the woke media to keep the volume up on COVID-19 hysteria. It's crucial to their strategy of forcing a vote-by-mail system that would easily invite voter fraud. It also provides a cover for keeping their mummified lead candidate, Joe Biden, moldering silently in his basement, as well as an excuse to avoid a real convention in Milwaukee, which would force Biden to step up and speak before a huge live audience. Imagine the mortification. Just as I'm unconvinced about the meaning of the COVID-19 surge, I don't buy the polls that show Biden 10 points up on Trump. I suspect many actual voters were not pleased by the June reign of terror unleashed by Democratic mayors and governors and did not fail to notice exactly how all that went down. And it is well known now, 4 years after the last election and its janky polling, that many voters won't reveal their true intentions to pollsters, fearing the vilification they'd invite. I've gotten a lot of letters and comments lately condemning my failure to go all out against Trump. So I'll state my current position plainly. I didn't vote for him last time, but I would vote for him this time to keep the Democratic Party out of power. There's a lot not to love about Trump and his persona and manner. There's a great deal more to fear about the prospect of Democratic Party control of government. Their enmity to free speech cannot be doubted after a decade of promoting cancel culture. Their appetite for coercion is at odds with the Bill of Rights. Their bad faith and dishonesty have been on display through all the concocted melodramas of Russiagate and its offshoots. Their economic program is a mashup of all the failed central planning regimes from the bygone 20th century and is wholly inconsistent with the new imperatives to downscale and relocalize the real productive activities of daily life in this country. Beyond Trump's deformities of personal presentation, I am more in favor with the blunt outlines of his policies. I'm for strict control of the nation's borders and, frankly, for reduced immigration. Globalism is clearly winding down, and Trump's drive to produce more of what we need here in America is in step with that reality. Trump has been careful to avoid new foreign misadventures, though the military establishment and their pals in the war industries have obstructed the president's will to quit the old adventures still being prosecuted in places across the Middle East and West Asia. I suspect Trump might have accomplished more in the nation's interest if he hadn't been hounded, harried, and sabotaged by the ceaseless bad faith hostilities of his opponents since November the 8th, 2016. I'm not confident about Trump's management of the nation's financial quandaries and especially the racking up of epic new debt. But there's plenty of evidence that the Democratic Party would do a lot worse in terms of spending money that doesn't exist and destroying what's left of the country's productive capacity, along with what remains of the middle class. I believe anyone who has managed to stay sane through the travails of the past 4 years cannot fail to see that the clinically incompetent Joe Biden is an obvious stalking horse for something more sinister. I think we will learn what that is before much longer. Joe Biden, regular guy, working class Catholic guy. Yeah. In response to the Supreme Court's 7-2 verdict affirming that the Little Sisters and other religious groups cannot be forced to pay for insurance that covers contraceptives and chemical abortifacients, if doing so would violate their religious beliefs, Biden said, "There is a clear path to fixing it, electing a new president who will end Trump's ceaseless attempts to gut every aspect of the Affordable Care Act. If I am elected, I will restore the Obama-Biden policy that existed before the Hobby Lobby ruling." That is to say, so the nuns will have to pay for contraceptives and abortions. Oh, Marcus Stroman, baseball pitcher. I started with the Toronto Blue Jays. He's now with the Mets. I was a fan of his when he started. I liked his enthusiasm, his talent. He's just turned out to be an absolute jerk. And this is from Fansided. Well, let's put it this way. The Jays got rid of him in a deal that was not particularly advantageous to the team, suggesting they were just sick to death of him, suggesting that he was clubhouse cancer, and they just wanted to dump him. Apparently, there is no love lost between Blue Jays outfielder Randall Grichuk and Marcus Stroman. The Twitter jousting began when former Major Leaguer Aubrey Huff called out Stroman for a 2019 weight room incident. Grichuk liked Huff's tweet, which prompted Stroman to refocus attention towards Grichuk. Stroman fired back that Huff and Grichuk are probably best friends and that Canada will not tolerate racism. Yeah, if you don't like me, says Marcus Stroman, then you're a racist. Stroman had initially reacted to a controversial tweet from Huff that initiated the weight room response. The outfielder responded that it was nothing personal and he only liked the tweet because he knew it was true and a known story among the organization. Stroman has vehemently denied the incident ever occurred in additional tweets yesterday from fans. And the tweet from Aubrey Huff says, I know what kind of guy you are, Stro. Remember 2019 spring training in Dunedin with the Blue Jays when you ordered the strength coach to kick out 30 minor leaguers from your weight room so you could jump rope? Sweet teammate. Marcus Stroman responded, we get it, Karen. You hate black people. You make it more obvious every day. It's comical to me at this point. See what I said about him being tiresome? And yeah, he just can't stop. He can't stop with this, with accusing everyone he doesn't like of being a racist. Well, that would be an awful lot of people by now. Someone called Andy Slavitt, the ex-Obama healthcare head, helper, it says. I don't know what that could refer to. Well, he's a helper, Andy Slavitt. On the phone with Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist, and that would be Lieutenant Governor of Michigan, who just said he has lost 23 people to COVID-19. People who say we are not in a crisis are lying. That's a curious phrase. So the lieutenant governor said he has just lost 23 people to COVID-19. This suggests a proprietary interest. And so he has lost 23 people to COVID-19. Did they die of it or did they just have it? And over what time period? It was pointed out to me that about in the last flu epidemic, or just the last flu season in Michigan, about 15 people a day were dying. Alex Berenson talking about, America being shut down forever, which is what the Democrats want, at least until there's a vaccine, I suppose, and they better not have a vaccine before the election because people might be able to vote in person. I do not trust this vaccine. I'm not going to have it. I'm just not, if it comes out. There's never been a coronavirus vaccine, but they're just, and can you imagine a vaccine for the common cold? How many billions or trillions of dollars that would be worth? It's not like they haven't tried. Oh no, but hey presto, we're going to have a vaccine real soon now. Oh, and it's not going to be rushed. They're not going to cut corners. It's not going to perhaps be not efficacious and perhaps more dangerous than vaccines already are. No, I don't want any part of it. And I'm reminded again of AIDS. People have this disease called AIDS. So it needs a kind of treatment. And we don't have the time to come up with a treatment. How about something off the shelf? So they found a drug called AZT. It was abandoned as a cancer treatment because it killed every single person who took it. And then it was given to AIDS patients and it killed every single person who took it. And you know why? Because AZT was a DNA chain terminator. It prevented the body from regenerating cells. Does that sound completely insane to you? Well, it does to me. But the experts decided that that's what the people with AIDS should be given. At the cost of tens of thousands of lives. Berenson writes, this is not a coup. Coups are military actions. What's happening now is part of a semi-normal political process. But it is now clear much of the U.S. power structure, especially the media, hates this president so much, they're committed to destroying him at any cost. Keep schools closed next fall while the rest of the world opens them, so be it. Foment panic over a virus that has killed a total of 9,000 Americans under 55 in 4 months. You got to do what you got to do. Ignore a huge rise in crime this spring? No worries. Openly attack the handful of media outlets that won't follow the narrative? Check. Pressure big tech social media companies to impose their own censorship? Done and done. Ignore a generation of scientific advice to justify draconian lockdowns? Absolutely. The best analogy I can think of here is the 1996 Russian presidential election, when the Russian power structure decided that Yeltsin had to win, that a communist couldn't be allowed to be elected. And ultimately, Yeltsin did win, and maybe that was the right choice. I don't know enough about Russia to guess either way. But the lies and propaganda destroyed whatever chance Russia's democracy had and set the stage for Vladimir Putin. Be careful what you wish for. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that these panickers, they want to destroy the United States. There's an old saying, a horrendous euphemism from the Vietnam War. We had to destroy the village to save it. And this is their policy with regard to COVID-19, that we are going to destroy the economy, and we'll reduce it to nothing if necessary, because, hey, the politicians are still getting paid. The teachers are still getting paid. All the important people, all the good people, all the essential people are getting paid. Destroy society, terrorize everyone, and simply, pretty much suspend the Bill of Rights. All in a day's work. All in a day's work. I want to talk about Margaret Trudeau, an amusing woman. She was born in 1948, and she was the daughter of James Sinclair, who was a Scotsman, born in Scotland, and he was a Liberal cabinet minister. So that is to say, let's see, he was a president and chairman of Lafarge Cement, director of the Bank of Montreal and Canadian Industries Limited, CIL. He was a big shot. He was a Canadian big shot, and Margaret Sinclair was his daughter. Sinclair is memorialized with the Sinclair Center in downtown Vancouver, right near the waterfront and by the bridge, which goes from Granville Street to the airport. So Margaret Sinclair, she was then, she was an 18-year-old. She was in Tahiti on a vacation, and she met Pierre Trudeau, who was, almost 50 at the time. And he pursued a romance with her. Now, all this is very curious to me for various reasons. Well, of course, the media, Trudeau had become prime minister in 1968 on a wave of psychosexual hysteria, as much among, there were a few female reporters, journalists in those days, so it was mostly psychosexual hysteria amongst male reporters. They were swooning at his feet. That Trudeau was to become the Canadian JFK. Of course, everyone had to have a JFK. Amusingly, both Harold Wilson and Edward Heath were referred to as Britain's JFK. Now, so Margaret Sinclair was the daughter of a famous and powerful man. So that is to say that there would be a lot of gossip about her, right? She wasn't some nobody, all right? Also, Pierre Trudeau was the Prime Minister of Canada, and he had access to the RCMP. That is to say that he could have got a dossier on this woman, and if he had got such a dossier, I don't know whether he would have married her. But there was this tremendous, I'll tell you something about Pierre Trudeau, a very strange man. At the time that he entered the Canadian cabinet in 1965, as one of the so-called three wise men, He was 45 years old, and he still lived at home. He'd never had a full-time job in his life. Oh, but apparently he was such a great sex symbol, despite the fact that he was bald and hideously pockmarked. I mean, a truly ugly man. But we were all gaslighted to believe that he was the handsomest, sexiest man in Canada, perhaps the world. Oh, and supposedly he had an affair with Barbara Streisand, and other names were dropped. I don't know whether any of this is true. But as you know, I grew up in Vancouver and lived there for most of my life. And it was a funny thing that whenever Margaret Trudeau's name was mentioned, among her contemporaries, particularly those who had attended Simon Fraser University as she did, you would get a big smile and chuckling like, and while the chuckling, both from men and women, okay? I ran into this again and again and again. Let's put it this way. Simon Fraser University was a hotbed of radical activity in Vancouver in the late 1960s, insofar, as Vancouver was a hotbed of radical activity. Let's put it that way. And that Margaret Trudeau, or Margaret Sinclair, as she then was, that her promiscuity was notorious, even by the standards of radical students at university. Now, Pierre Trudeau, of course, was humiliated later by his wife, humiliated in public. And the weird thing is that public opinion was on the side of the husband rather than the wife. There's no fool like an old fool. He should have known better, but he didn't. And yeah, let's see. This is from Wikipedia. Although the couple initially appeared to have a very close and loving relationship, the marriage soon began to fall apart. Trudeau resented her husband's constant work-related absences and was forced to raise her 3 young sons, largely by herself. Beyond the normal extensive publicity her high-profile position brought, in a few instances she headlined. Trudeau smuggled drugs in the Prime Minister's luggage, made scantily clad appearances at Studio 54, and tore apart a quilt made by Canadian conceptual artist Joyce Wieland on the wall in the Prime Minister's official residence in Ottawa because it celebrated reason over passion. Yes, the heart wants what it wants. She was photographed at Studio 54 with her dress hiked up to her hips, and she wasn't wearing underwear, so what they call a beaver shot. And she was rumored to have had sexual relationships with several members of the Rolling Stones, although Keith Richards, when he was asked about this, issued the memorable line, "I wouldn't touch her with a barge pole." And so they broke up in about 1977 and was later divorced, and she didn't get to see much of the children. There was so people in Canada are talking about Margaret Trudeau now because it turns out she received $250,000 for speeches from the Canadian government. What does she speak about? She speaks about being crazy. No, really. That's what she does. And the Canadian government put aside $900 million, which is an enormous amount in my country, to something called the WE Foundation, run by the Kilburgers. I have to be very careful what I say. They are very litigious. Anyway, the whole thing fell apart, and it's a huge scandal, and Trudeau has apologized. We'll see whether he gets away with it, but considerable amounts of public money were directed towards his mother and to one of his brothers. So Maxime Bernier was the leader of the People's Party of Canada, former MP and cabinet minister himself. He tweeted 2 days ago, "What has Margaret Trudeau achieved in life to warrant being paid $250,000 to give a few pep talks to kids?" apart from marrying a prime minister and being the mother of another. Oh, right. That's how things work in a banana republic. And the woke women were furious. Lisa Kirby, who does something in politics or public relations, and was married to Warren Kinsella, who's also exceedingly litigious. He's the only person to have ever sued me. She responded, "What a disgustingly sexist message this is. Women are more than the men to whom they are married or the men they raise. Margaret Trudeau is an author, an actor, a photographer, an activist, and an outspoken mental health advocate. Shame on you." Yeah, I responded, "That's quite the CV she's put together, but you forgot Serenader of Fidel Castro, Studio 54 habitué, Rolling Stones groupie, and stalker." And you want to know just how crazy Margaret Trudeau is? There's a long, loving profile in her in Vanity Fair 3 years ago about her. A scandalously divorced from one Canadian prime minister, now proud mother of another, Margaret Trudeau looks back at the tragic spiral that led to her battle against bipolar disorder. Ryan O'Neal, in those days, was still one of Hollywood's favorite bad boys, a rake with sandy hair and a Pepsodent smile. Pepsodent smile, that's a curious simile. Does Pepsodent still exist? But never mind. He had already dispatched the hearts of Ursula Andress, Bianca Jagger, 2 wives, and a host of others. And as he pulled up to the entrance of the Beverly Hills Hotel on that day in 1979, driving a beige Rolls and wearing a Hawaiian shirt, he was soon to do the same to Margaret Trudeau, the wispy, glamorous wife of the Prime Minister of Canada. Maggie, as her friends knew her, would later note that theirs was one of the shortest-lived, most exciting and absurd affairs of her life. The 38-year-old O'Neal was shallow and represented everything that was wrong about the way that I lived. Oh, well, he was shallow, but apparently you didn't like Pierre Trudeau because he was too serious. Okay. And boy, how Margaret Trudeau had lived. By the late 1970s, she was an international sensation, the Holly-go-lightly of the Mounties, the werewood wife who had left Canada's dashing intellectual Prime Minister Pierre and their 3 young sons to pursue a life of glitz and unbridled hedonism that was splashed on the pages of every international tabloid. She had met O'Neal at Studio 54, where she was a regular. He was sort of like Cary Grant and Peter Lawford, lanky and tall and elegant, just perfect lines everywhere, she says today, and where she once memorably sat on a patron's birthday cake. A photo of her kicking up her heels on the 54 dance floor the same night in 1979 that her husband lost re-election was zapped all over the world, confirmative evidence of her status as the gold standard in reckless bohemian chic. As most of O'Neal's conquests did, Margaret enjoyed frisky fun with him, tumbling for his mix of boy-next-door charm and a touch of menace. Until the day she taped an episode of the Mike Douglas Show and then went to his house to see him, only to be told he couldn't let her in because his son was at home. Piqued and undaunted, she hiked up her tight leather skirt and scaled the high walls surrounding O'Neal's mansion, teetering on black suede pumps as her driver looked on, suitably agog. O'Neal had been appalled, amused, and impressed, but not enough to hang around for more. Things quickly flamed out. So Margaret Trudeau did the only thing she could think of, which was to stop for Japanese takeout, then have the driver pull over on Sunset Boulevard so she could toss the entire meal at a billboard for the main event, O'Neal's new movie. I remind her of this story one night as we sit in the back of a car in the outskirts of Toronto. It's not a funny memory. Oh, the madness, she says, trailing off, looking out the window. She's come to terms with all of this, with her torrid past and its resulting infamy, and with her serenity about it all, which seems genuine and hard-won. Yeah, there's that business about her apartment burning down not all that long ago. Apparently, it's a problem with propane tank. Yeah, okay. Let's see. I've had the biggest shame of all. I've been locked away in a psych ward. I lost my mind. I've been humiliated like nobody's been humiliated. Everybody talking about it and laughing about it and joking about it just because of that. And that alone means I'm the one to talk about it because they can't throw anything more at me. Yeah, it's a funny way to make a living. And I guess the Canadian taxpayers have to pay for her to tell everyone, yeah, I'm crazy, or I used to be crazy, but now I'm better. I don't really want to take advice from crazy people, but they're the ones who are giving it these days. So I suppose that we have no choice. I'm going to have a final look at the chat here. Oh, yes, the longstanding rumor that Fidel Castro is, in fact, Justin Trudeau's father. They do. There's a resemblance. Justin Proto, Keith Richards got busted with 1 ounce of heroin. Just 1 ounce. The guy knows how to party. He was very lucky he didn't go to prison. But he was ordered to play a concert for the blind. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. Oh, I like the Elliot reference. MCT, KMG, always a pleasure to partake of your winsome wit. God bless us, everyone. Good night, all. The old man did some good things, too. Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms. No, that was a very bad thing. Very, very bad thing, because it destroyed Canada's tradition of common law and instituted positive law, which is now owned solely by the courts. By the courts. Absolute disaster. They provided cover for the Castro dictatorship for decades. Yeah, it was very fashionable for the longest time for leftists to holiday in Cuba. I suppose one of the reasons being that, of course, most of them didn't really want to talk about this honestly, is that I'm told that the prostitutes were very inexpensive, a cheap holiday in other people's misery, as the Sex Pistols sang. Okay. She most certainly had relations with Fidel Castro. I don't know whether that's true or not. I wouldn't put it past her. I wouldn't put anything past her. I take an autocrat who left me alone and aired up the currency with gold over our current STDs 1,000 times over. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got to say for tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in, for visiting. I'll be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you like the show or any part of it, I appreciate it if you click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not all done so already. And on Theater Thursday, we're going to be talking about John Ford's Immortal the Searchers. And on the book club, we're going to be talking about Alex Berenson's Tell Your Children, which is a paean against marijuana use, particularly for young people. If you would like to contribute to this program, and in all honesty, I could really use it right now because I have to get out of this place. You've heard the noises, right? You've all heard the noises, and it's not going to get any better. My PayPal address is kevin_grace@hotmail.com. Again, kevin_grace@hotmail.com. And I will leave you with this: in these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly hope that you, my dear listeners and viewers, manage to secure a genuine human relationship of some kind in order to ease the burden. Good night.